Hello everyone and welcome to FiST Chat, the vodcast that features discussions on the topics of film, science and technology. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve?
I'm good, thanks Ben. Hi FiST Chat fans, coming to you again from Google+.
Absolutely. Now, before we launch into our myriad of topics today, don't forget our website, www.fistchat.com. You can get all of our links there. You can subscribe to our audio via iTunes, RSS, and FeedBurner, or at least FeedBurner for the time being, before Google kills it. You can also get all of our videos, YouTube, Vimeo, and Digicosm TV. You can interact with us on Twitter, Google+, and Facebook, so we'd love to hear from you. Our ebook is available on Amazon. You can go to fistreport.com to check out the links there. Very cheap and a good read. Trust us on that one. And we've got our supplementary content, the weekly blogs, photography on Instagram and Flickr, and recommend us to anyone who you think may be interested in our weekly discussions. Now, just a hangover from our last episode where we were talking about the Pope being on Twitter. So we asked the question, should the Pope be on Twitter? And the response was 57% said no and 43% said yes. Sort of a 50-50 kind of result that. I guess it depends on how it's used by the Pope or whether he can use it.
I think that would be the main problem, but, I think in a modern age, I mean, he's the head of a large organisation. He could talk to his people via Twitter.
And why shouldn't he embrace it? Because that is how we communicate these days.
I mean, wouldn't it be nice to, commune with the Pope through prayer in 140 characters or less, Ben?
Think about the mass that could be done worldwide by that.
Exactly. And, he'd certainly then be a Pope of the people, more so perhaps than any other Pope.
Absolutely. All right, we'll move on. We're going to talk about the future of the climate change debate, which is a little bit different than talking about the future of climate change, in that the debate itself is almost as interesting as the problem that it's debating. It's sort of gone through sort of different sort of ups and downs over the years. There was a real groundswell of support in the mid-2000s for it, and then I guess the GFC took care of that, and now it feels like that it's sort of gaining momentum again, and we've got a couple of different stories to cover here. It was sort of highlighted here in Australia recently, particularly where I am in Victoria, because for the first time this hardly ever happens. There were mini tornadoes tearing through country Victoria just recently, and it was actually quite serious, and it tore up a whole lot of, houses and all of that sort of thing, and there were people that were injured. And again, whenever this sort of thing happens, it kind of brings to the fore the whole climate change thing, because people will then use that as an example as to this is the extreme weather that we've been talking about. It's starting, they're mini tornadoes now, though there might be big tornadoes later. So, but do you see any merit in that kind of argument, or do you think that the climate change people are sort of like clutching at that to sort of foster their argument?
Well, it's an interesting thing, but there's so little, understanding of what climate change is that's the real issue. So, extreme weather events like this are not proof that climate change is occurring. However, what is very interesting is that it may be where you live turns out to be like because of climate change down the track. So, I think for many of us who live in reasonably comfortable, temperate environments where we've seen a lot of same in terms of weather and climate over the years, we often forget that, there are places in the polar regions which are pretty close to inhabitable for man or for humans, and that it doesn't take much. If the climate does change, you might find that the nice little place you live might not be so nice to live anymore.
Absolutely. All right, we'll keep moving now. something very interesting. We've spoken about, I think, crowdsourcing in a limited way before, but never quite seen it in conjunction with the climate change debate. With this crowdsourcing tool called Reality Drop that Al Gore and his, I guess, his minions are sort of promoting at the moment, is a very I, I dare to say a very strange looking sort of concept where basically it's sort of an aggregator of articles on climate change, whether it's for it or against it, and you basically have two options: whether to deny the a story if it's denying climate change, and the other one is to support it if it is it's about supporting climate change. And we'll put the link up, and you'll be able to see it for yourself on our social media feeds, because it's probably best that you check it out yourselves to fully understand what's happening. But essentially, what you can do is it's sort of crowdsourcing public opinion. It's sort of directing people to go to these articles and sort of pump their opinions onto the article writers, so that, I don't know, what would be the point of that? Just to stir up debate, get them fired up, or just draw attention to why you don't agree with them, or who knows?
Well, in principle, it's a good idea. It's fighting misinformation with real information. But despite its best intentions, I think it's got some incredibly dangerous implications. I mean, the fact that it just turns the whole discussion into a debate of right versus wrong, and the fact that you get points for posting more truth. It's good in terms of making sure that the voices that are, I guess, scientifically correct are heard, but the way it goes about it is dubious at best, and it's no better than the tactics that perhaps the climate deniers are using. I think it actually shows ultimately how anyone can manipulate public sentiment on the internet through crowdsourcing, and it's a little bit scary. I'm not sure I like it, Ben.
Well, I mean, maybe when I first sort of started looking at it and I saw that it was highlighting articles on the debate and all of that, I thought, okay, fair enough. But then when I started seeing things like, oh, you get points for, the amount of times you send a comment to deny a climate change denying article, or, I mean, it's not a game. And I mean, it's in the best light, it's sort of a misguided attempt to tap into the youth of today, to sort of appeal to their, I guess, the social media driven type of mindset. But it just it seems silly on one hand, and like you said, it looks dangerous on the other.
Well, that's right. And I mean, the other thing that does, which I really don't like at all, is it kind of, in a dubious way as well, sort of promotes the idea that just posting stuff online about climate change is enough to do something about it. And, you don't actually have to change your behaviours or the way that you live, which is the real issue around climate change. Yeah. As you say, Ben, turning it into a game, well, that's nice, I think. But, social media has carried this debate for a long time already, with a lot of good commentary on Twitter available for people, and a lot of good Facebook sites. I don't know that this necessarily improves the level of discussion, and that to me is something that really needs to happen. And I don't actually think it improves scientific literacy on the topic either.
So just finally, is it a bit of a surprise that Al Gore's sort of lent his name to it, given he's Mr. Climate Change?
No surprise at all. I've got to say it. He's a business.
Do you think? But
his businesses.
Do you think he truly understands? I mean, it's a bit silly to ask, maybe, but do you think he truly understands the concept of what's going on with this thing?
Yeah, I think he does, and I think that they're being innovative in what they're trying to do. And I think that, as I said, I think there's some good points to what they're trying to do. I just think the way that they're doing it is really, really bad.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll move from one crowdsourcing topic to another with our first news bite, the film news bite. The TV show Veronica Mars, there's a campaign that's rattling the movie industry at the moment. This is from Yahoo Movie News. Now, Now, the producer of the hit TV show, well, cult TV show, I should say, Veronica Mars, that was cancelled in 2007. And apparently, he's gone out and started a Kickstarter campaign to crowdsource funding for a feature film version. Now, apparently, he had a goal of raising $2 million in less than 11 hours, so he could greenlight, so it could be greenlit and it could start shooting. But apparently, it surpassed more than 3.7 million with more than 2 weeks to go in its run. The debate here is this isn't just an indie film, that this is like because it's a actual studio film. Well, the property is a studio based one. Is this going to change the way film studios raise their money for projects? I mean, can you imagine the irony? You know, they're already making us pay to watch their films. Are they going to make us pay to make the films as well?
Yeah, and this is a funny one, a bit like the reality drop campaign. You know, this is a bit mixed as well. Look, I think, honestly, the fact that fans can get together and effectively bankroll the film that they want to see is great. And, you know, to me, ultimately, that's fantastic. Is it bad that Hollywood is on the end of it? Well, they're going to make the best possible production and get you the best distribution. So that's probably a positive. The fact that they're not really willing to bankroll it themselves, well, that's just the way it goes. I don't think, and I think you'd probably agree with this, I don't think it'll change making the really big budget films at the large end of town. But this will certainly get more of those smaller films made. You know, but I think that ultimately what will happen, though, is because it's, you know, it's not really a creative project. This is a project that already exists. So it's an extension of a creative project. And I think that the people that ultimately lose out are those that are probably genuine, independent, creative people now who are managing to fund their films. I think they'll just get crushed because people will always go with the more popular concept, which has probably already been seen on TV.
Yeah.
So it's a two-edged sword, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty, we'll move on to our science news bite. Australian science, a fair go means rewarding quality, from the ABC. Now, this was more of an opinion piece that was basically suggesting Australian science overall isn't as good as those practicing it like to think it is. It's sort of an interesting read in that I guess it was trying to basically get at the fact that perhaps the government can't really support every institution that's devoted to science in the country, and as a result, you're getting some institutions that are not really doing much to contribute to science, while you get others that are going through the roof. And is that really fair? How do you see it, Steve? I'm guessing from your end, you'd probably know a bit more about this than what I would.
Well, it's a very tricky and highly political issue. I think, just getting back to perhaps some of the climate change debate things, the fact is that Australian society especially is yet to fully embrace issues of science and society, and where the two matter, not just to scientists or to people working in technology, but how it will matter for all of us, ultimately in our daily lives. The way that science is funded in this country is typically, certainly historically, relied on government funding, but there are organisations that are very good at getting their own funding as well. And I think typically that there's been the notion that Australian science, punches above its weight. And it depends which way you want to view it. I think, we do have very good scientists. We have a great science community, but we don't have probably the stability or the support within the community that you might enjoy in places like Europe or the US. So I think that's it's just picking away at a bit of a sore point there. And really, I think the government, but not just the government, the public have to get on board, behind Australian science and really appreciate, I think, the good work done. And that will translate into more spending, by both the government and other private organisations.
Yep, absolutely. And finally, we've got two tech news bites, both Apple related. Thought we'd have to dip our toe in the Apple world again. Both these are from Apple Insider. Jony Ive to bring software, hardware teams together and push for flat design. And that's probably not a surprise. He's a bit of a minimalist designer. And I don't know if you've noticed on your iPhone, Steve, but a couple of software updates that have come through recently, I think, bear his signature. With particularly in the music and podcast apps, which sport different types of controls that are much easier to use than the previous versions had.
Well, I don't know, Ben and FiST Chat fans. I'm still on iOS 5.
So you're not you're only part of that 5% that didn't upgrade to the latest version, because you know how they tout in the keynotes that users adopt these things quickly.
Look, I was so happy with my iPhone 4S when I first got it almost 2 years ago. I haven't needed to change anything.
Absolutely. And this was a bit of a blast from the past too. Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak talks Apple One, Jobs and more in a rare video from 1984. And this was actually quite a cool little video to watch, mainly for historical reasons. It's very very retro to be looking at these types of videos now. Even like some of the early videos of Steve Jobs and when he was I don't know, more youthful and even more hubris in nature when he was younger, which was quite interesting. But it's just good to be able to see Steve Wozniak on the record as well.
Yeah, it is. I mean, he's an interesting character, and together they made a fantastic team. And back then, in the heady days, the idealistic days, it's interesting to see his thoughts. And I mean, he knew Steve Jobs better than anyone, well before any biography was written.
Yeah, exactly. Alrighty, so I think we're totally out of time now. So thanks again, Steve, for the chat.
Anytime, FiST Chat fans, tweet us and tweet the Pope if he starts an account this week.
Absolutely. All right, so that's it for this week's episode. So we'll catch you next week.